to The Fitterist Show with your host, Christopher Allen, where we explore the art of mind and body conditioning. With most of society being bombarded with diet messages, diet rules, do and don't foods, eat this and not that, coupled with photoshopped Instagram pictures of just unnatural physiques, etc., an alternative approach is what's called intuitive eating. Intuitive eating is a philosophy that rejects traditional dieting and instead supports listening to your body's own cues about what, when, and how much to eat. Now, this approach was not designed specifically for weight loss, but rather an approach that considers your mental, emotional, and physical health holistically. In this show, we'll discuss the foundation of intuitive eating and the core 10 principles that guides one in this methodology. Since intuitive eating rejects the traditional weight loss diets that promote caloric restriction and or deprivation, it encourages a much more inner reflection on how hungry or how satisfied you are in a given moment, and use that information to guide what, when, and how much to eat. While the eating experience is also called mindful eating, intuitive eating encompasses a broader spectrum that includes physical activity, mental reflection, and your ability to regain confidence in your own eating habits. So what is intuitive eating? It's really a philosophy of eating that makes you the expert of your body and its hunger signals. It's an eating style that promotes a healthy attitude toward food and body image. There's no calorie counting, there's no restrictions or deprivations on any certain foods. Essentially, it's kind of the opposite of a traditional diet. It doesn't impose any guidelines about what to avoid and what or when to eat. Rather, it teaches you that you are the best person and really kind of the only person to make those choices. You know your body better than anyone else. The idea is that you should eat when you're hungry and obviously stop when you're full. And ideally, you'd be in tune enough with your body's signals that you can understand the what, when, and how much your body needs to eat. This means you're obviously in touch with your signals for hunger and, equally important, your signal for fullness, but not being obsessive about it. It means that your body is telling you what it needs to eat in order to function best, and you're trusting it. It means you find out what normal eating is for your body, specific to you. Now, this should be an intuitive process, but for many people, it's not. And since it's so unique to each individual, meals, the foods consumed, eating times, etc., will all be different for each person. A little background in history. The term intuitive eating was really coined by Evelyn Tribble and Elise Resch with their book by the same name, and I'll provide links in the show notes on the website www.fitters.com/019 for episode 19. Their program was really built on the principle that diets really don't work and that lifestyle changes and personal care are more important for long-term health. And one of the key distinctions that they bring out, in order to eat intuitively, one needs to learn the distinction between physical and emotional hunger. Now, physical hunger, this is really the biological urge that tells you you need to eat. You need to replenish the nutrients in the body. It builds gradually, has different signals. Could be a growling stomach, could be a little fatigue, could be irritability, it could be a number of things that trigger that urge for physical hunger. Whereas emotional hunger, this is driven by more of an emotional need. So things that trigger sadness, loneliness, boredom, or some of the things that can create cravings for food and comfort foods that solve temporarily an emotional need, but usually is followed quickly by guilt from eating from an emotional basis rather than from a physical basis. Some examples of emotional hunger could include boredom, certain social situations. The food just is there. It's out on the counter. It's easy to access. They're giving away free samples at the store. Watching TV or a movie. It's super easy to eat a lot when you're distracted. Holidays, celebrations, anxiety, even happiness. You could celebrate by, I feel good. I want to eat something. That's an emotional eating. So an intuitive eating is based on physical hunger rather than any prescriptions from a diet, guidelines, or even experts. Eating should satisfy physical hunger without causing the guilt associated most often with emotional eating. So let's dive into the 10 principles of intuitive eating. Number 1, reject the diet mentality. So this is really about eliminating, saying goodbye to all rigid food rules, dietary restrictions, that aren't medically necessary, and the pressure to eat perfectly all the time. There's always going to be some new fad diet, the diet that's publicized in the media and on the talk shows. But constant or long-term dieting is often unsustainable. So the first principle of intuitive eating is to stop dieting and to stop believing those societal messages that quick fix plans, give me a week, drop 10 pounds, all those things can really deliver lasting results. That includes throwing away diet books, magazine articles, anything that promises fast weight loss, and rejecting meal plans that dictate what or how much you can exactly eat. The quest for that perfect diet that will work for you is a bit of a myth, hence the principle of intuitive eating as kind of the anti-diet. Principle number 2, respect the hunger. As babies, we cry when we're hungry. It is a physical need for food, even if it's outside the typical eating times. While some structure to meals can be helpful, particularly if you have a busy schedule, ignoring your hunger because it's not time to eat isn't very helpful either. So you should respond to your early signs of hunger by feeding your body. Sounds intuitive, hence the name. If you let yourself go excessively hungry, then you're likely to overeat. And often dieting doesn't really work because it can leave you feeling deprived and physically hungry. You never actually satisfy your physical hunger because you're on a caloric restriction. So instead of counting calories or watching portions, simply pay attention to your body's hunger cues. That means eating a sufficient amount of calories and even carbohydrates to keep your body fed and satiated. Once you learn to recognize those hunger signals in your own body, it becomes much more easy to trust your instincts and repair some of the unhealthy relationships you might have at present with food. Principle number 3, challenging the food police. And this involves really avoid the categorizing food as good or bad. It's really neither good nor bad if you're eating certain foods. These rigid food rules and feelings of insecurity about eating, quote, bad foods that can actually harm our relationship with food. All foods, especially when eating a variety of them, can serve a purpose in your overall eating plan. When you're eating the right mix of nourishing foods, an indulgence every now and then doesn't have to be some big dramatic event. It could just be part of a natural eating routine. Intuitive eating describes the food police as those voices in your head that tell you it's good to eat fewer calories, it's bad to eat desserts. In other words, your psyche, your inner self-talk about your food, all the dieting rules you've heard again and again and again over years in marketing and media and images and advertising that make you feel guilty for not following them all the time. And that food police can be real people as well, who will tell you what's good or bad to eat. But ignoring these voices is an important step in really embracing intuitive eating. Principle number 4, make peace with food. And this is about stopping the fight in your head with food and allowing yourself to eat all types of foods. If we tell ourselves not to eat a certain food, we feel deprived and often then overeat, which could be uncomfortable and bring feelings of guilt. But when you're on a diet, certain foods are promoted as being forbidden, which tends to drive stronger cravings for that same food. And when you finally eat that food, it's easy to binge, and then you feel guilty, which then brings you back into this vicious cycle. That's why getting rid of these ideas about what you should or shouldn't eat is important in this principle. And one of the interesting things is when you give yourself permission to eat, quote, bad foods because they're no longer banned as part of some diet, you often end up asking yourself, do I really want this now? Is this good for me? How will I feel after I'm finished eating this? And because the food is no longer, quote, banned or forbidden to eat, the desire to eat something a diet was telling them they couldn't have is actually lessened. So this is that same principle of the more you're told you can't have something, the more you actually want it. But once you're told, yeah, you can have it, you're like, I don't really need it. Principle number 5, respect your fullness. This is really about getting in tune with your hunger and check in with yourself as you eat. As your body begins to tell you when it's hungry, it also has signals to cue you when it's full. If you start to feel full, consider maybe saving the rest of the meal, even if you've got a portion already set out, save it as leftovers or for another meal later that week. As you get those signals of comfortable fullness, not bloated fullness, when you feel you've had enough, as you're eating, kind of check yourself to see how you're feeling. It's important to eat when you're hungry, but it's also important to stop when those hunger cues are no longer present. And sometimes it's helpful to pause in the middle of your meal or snack to assess your current state and just ask yourself, how do I feel? Are you still eating to feed your hunger? Are you eating out of distraction while you're doing something else on the computer or watching TV? Are you eating out of boredom? Are you full but not stuffed? Those are good signals to maybe stop. Principle number 6, discover the satisfaction factor. And this is really about making your eating experience enjoyable. So when you have a meal that tastes good to you, sit down, relax, and eat it. When you eat something that you really want to, you may find that it actually takes less food to decide that you've had enough to eat. And getting satisfaction from your food is about truly understanding what feels good and what doesn't. Most people have never really asked themselves the question, what do I like to eat? What feels good in my body? What works for me? What makes me feel good, both physically, mentally, and emotionally? And to put this into practice, you can start with just one meal a day. Make it a time in which you eat really without distraction. Focus on one aspect of the food, maybe the taste or the visual appeal or the texture. And when you make eating that pleasurable experience, you may find that it takes less food to actually satisfy your hunger. Principle number 7, honor your feelings without using food. We all experience negative emotions and things that upset us during the day from time to time, but using food to solve those problems rarely works. So really look for ways that are unrelated to food to deal with your feelings. Maybe you take a break, get outside, take a walk. Maybe you spend 10, 15 minutes meditating. Maybe you like to journal. Maybe you talk to a friend. But become aware of those times when a feeling that you might call hunger is really based on emotion. People often overeat because of things like anxiety or loneliness or boredom, anger, stress, anything like that. That's why it's important to get rid of the root of these problems and really find ways to nurture yourself and resolve those issues without really turning to food. Note that it's not always large, strong emotions that cause overeating. Sometimes it's just mundane things like being bored. When you're sitting watching TV is a perfect example where you're watching TV or surfing the internet and you just start eating and next thing you know, bag of pretzels is gone. That's not from personal experience though. But being more mindful in all aspects of life with your food and your emotions can really help you sort out those overlaps between emotions and true physical hunger. Principle number 8, respect your body. Rather than criticizing your body for how it looks and what you perceive to be wrong with it, recognize that it is your body. It is beautiful. It is unbelievably functional and capable just as it is. Intuitive eating is also about body acceptance. That means you just feel good about how your genetics and the body that you were meant to have, and not constantly striving for these unrealistic expectations about how much weight you can lose, what size jeans you need to fit into, or what your body weight needs to be. And it's also important to remember that intuitive eating, by design, is not really a weight loss plan. Although some people do lose weight and keep it off, but that's more due to leaving behind some of their unhealthy dieting history and food restriction. Principle number 9, exercise. Feel the difference. Movement, exercise is an important part of health. And you're more likely to participate in exercise if you enjoy what you're doing. Focus on how you feel during the exercise, whether it's walking, whether it's jumping rope, whether it's CrossFit, whether you like training with weights, doing cardio, treadmill, running, jogging. You're much more likely to engage in that consistent exercise if it makes you feel energized instead of physically drained. So find ways to move your body that you enjoy. Shift the focus from losing weight to feel energized and strong and functional, which will be a lot more sustainable over time anyway. Exercise has many benefits that even the healthiest eating plan can't convey on its own. Obviously, it boosts mood, strengthens the heart cardiovascular system, increased lean muscle mass, just to name a few. It's a great complement to any eating plan. Principle number 10, honor your health. Intuitive eating, which is really a non-diet approach to eating, again, is not really anti-health. Most of the times, you choose foods that make you feel good. Ideally, these are fruits, vegetables, protein, healthy fats. The food you eat should taste good and make you feel good. At the same time, intuitive eating encourages practicing compassion if you overeat or sometimes eat indulgent food. It's okay. It's one time. It's not a 12-pack of Pop-Tarts for breakfast every day. Remember, it's your overall food patterns that really shape your health. So one meal, one snack isn't going to make or break your health either way. It's consistency with good food over time. In other words, eating intuitively should still involve much more fruits and vegetables than things like ice cream. But at the same time, a diet doesn't have to be perfect to be healthy. You shouldn't beat yourself up if you make a less than perfect decision on a snack choice. It's just one time. You get back on the bandwagon and keep moving forward. So the next question is, how do I start to eat intuitively? And there's really two key things when you're starting out. One, give yourself some time. And two, be forgiving of your early failures. So the first step, obviously, is getting rid of the food rules. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Every diet, all the cultural thoughts, all the bombardment from the media, all the connection between food and weight, you have to literally, all food is on the yes list. There is no food that's on the no list. Try to remove all your judgments of good and bad and just go with it. It also means there's no limits on how much of whatever kind of food you want to have. You're always allowed to have more. A second step would be to have intentional meal times. So this is where you turn off the electronics, no laptop, no surfing, no TV, no phone, no books, no computers, just you and your food, chewing and deciding when you're really full. And here you can chew slowly, breathe, put down your fork in between bites, take your time. Carve out a little bit of space to listen to your body and see, as you're tasting each bite, as you're chewing, do you like what you're eating? How does it make you feel? How do you feel? And here's what's interesting about intuitive eating. When you start to give yourself the freedom, you'll begin to grow tired of the foods that used to taunt you when you're on a diet, the things you couldn't have. Your body will start to crave things that aren't the carbs or the sugar or salt. And you'll learn how to eat a normal amount of whatever food is that you choose to eat. It will even help you to start saying no to foods that just don't make you feel good. And because you spent time eating them and investigating how it actually makes your body feel, you'll start to crave the foods that your body actually needs. So what are the benefits of intuitive eating? Well, one of the major benefits of intuitive eating is really better psychological health. You are building a healthy relationship between food, your body, your emotions, to build an overall better psychological health. A lot of participants, when they did intuitive eating studies, also showed improved self-esteem, improved body image, improved overall quality of life, while also experiencing less depression, less stress, less anxiety. Intuitive eating can also be more sustainable. It has pretty good retention rates because people stick with a program that meets their needs without being overly restrictive on food choices. And as people practice intuitive eating for a longer period of time, they generally have higher self-esteem. They tend to have a little bit lower body mass index because they eat a variety of foods and they have more trust in their bodies. Intuitive eating can certainly help free someone from a dieting mentality, especially someone that's bounced from diet to diet. It can also lead to imbalanced eating and confusion about what's the right balance of foods. We're clearly faced with a number of social and emotional eating triggers on a daily basis: peer pressure, media, social media. Therefore, a hybrid approach may work best for a lot of people. So tuning into hunger cues and embracing the idea that no food is forbidden is still crucial for long-term health and overall weight management. But this should likely be coupled with an education around balanced meals, portion sizes, food quality, nutrients, and meal timing. Thus, the only two options are not just, quote, diet or intuitive eating, but think of it as a spectrum where you can eat intuitively, but something that's rooted in a foundation of a solid understanding of nutritional guidelines, where intuition and education work synergistically in helping one achieve their goals. So in summary, the principles of intuitive eating can help improve your relationship with food, which is extremely important. So you end up spending less time thinking about eating and more time engaging in just meaningful life experiences. With intuitive eating, how you eat is just as important as what you eat. So letting your own internal cues of hunger and fullness guide your eating can lead to an improved body image and improved overall quality of life. In my personal experience with intuitive eating, I found that a hybrid approach works best with myself. That is, I've learned to eat pretty well in a pretty structured approach, but I don't hesitate to eat a dessert when I'm out to dinner or occasionally a donut as part of a balanced breakfast. Yes, I still get my 30 to 40 grams of protein at breakfast regardless, even if I do have a donut or two. But those occasions are the exceptions and definitely not the norm. So when I do crave something, I might get it. Oftentimes, I'm too lazy to go out and get the junk food, though. That's in practice. But even if I do, I'm right back on my plan. So, look, intuitive eating allows you to manage your body, your mind, your weight, looking at things holistically while still feeling satisfied and in control, all without sticking to a strict diet. Note, however, that a cautious approach to intuitive eating is warranted for those struggling with food issues. You really want to have some foundation of discipline before going directly to a full intuitive eating plan. And the theory is that, again, if you can have pizza whenever you want, it feels less essential to eat it until you're uncomfortable when the opportunity presents itself, or to seek out the opportunity at all. That's not to say that intuitive eating is a guaranteed way to lose weight or fix whatever you think is physically wrong, but if you have been experiencing an endless array of diets without success, or you dropped weight and gained that plus more back, intuitive eating could be really beneficial. Remember, it's not about eating whatever you want, though eating things that you want is a key part of it, but it's also allowing your body to relearn some of the basic survival and satisfaction instincts that we're all born with. Intuitive eating is a philosophy that encourages us to listen to our bodies for hunger and satisfaction cues, to eat when we're hungry and to stop when we're full. Letting those internal cues of hunger and fullness guide your eating can sometimes really lead to an improved body image and overall quality of life. So if you've tried intuitive eating or a hybrid approach to intuitive eating combined with a little more structure, let me know how it goes in the comments below, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of The Fitterist Show. With that, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to The Fitterist Show. You can follow us on Instagram at FitteristMindBody and on Twitter at FitteristMind. If you enjoyed this episode, please send it to a friend or subscribe to make sure you don't miss any future episodes of The Fitterist Show. My name is Christopher Allen, and make it a magical day.